live from the city. This is the High Valuation Code with Matteo Turi.
And welcome everyone to another episode of the High Valuation Code. Welcome, Matteo. And today we are moving into one of perhaps the most misunderstood areas of business growth. A lot of founders believe that international expansion automatically increases the value of the organization, but more countries or more flags in the map, more ambition, more perceived scale. But the real question is this, actually. Does international growth make the business stronger, or it expose the weakness of the core? And this is a very interesting question because you have many more moving parts. That is what we are discussing today. And our topic is specifically scaling international without breaking the core. And by the way, there is a full chapter dedicated to this in the book. If you haven't got the book Matteo wrote, is already available in Amazon, Fail, Pivot, and Scale. If you go to page 200, you will have Going Global. Hopefully the camera is capturing this right. So it's a full episode or full chapter or group of information there, how to do this properly, what to watch, what to do. And probably we're going to discuss many of these topics today, so I don't want to go into specific pages, but definitely it's all there in the book. So why this matters? Because many businesses do not fail internationally because demand is absent, right? So they fail because their operating systems was never ready to travel. And when we say travel, is just to do these activities in the process that they operate their businesses. So Matteo, what do you think if we start here? Why do so many businesses treat internationalization as a growth decision when in reality it's a structural decision?
Thank you, Francisco. In fact, going global is the last triangle of the high valuation triangle.
Right.
And that's why, there are 3 chapters in the book dedicated to going global, international
Right.
readiness. And thank you for showing that because it's it's a very important part of nowadays doing business. Because especially with AI,
Yeah.
you almost have to you think global the moment you start because AI changes the rules of internationalization.
Yeah.
You were asking me the question, why businesses say, okay, well, I'm going to grow, I'm going to go international, and then
Yeah.
they need to actually make sure that the structure is in place. Because expansion, often people they feel like it's like a romance, like falling in love with global
Yeah.
market. People think international growth means success. They think entering another market proves maturity. But expansion is not a proof of strength, actually.
Yeah.
It's a test of strength. So it's
Right.
almost like, you need to prove yourself. Am I strong enough to expand now? And that changes everything. Because when a business goes into a new country, it's not just selling in a new postcode, really. It's forcing its pricing logic, it's forcing its management discipline, compliance system, reporting architecture, customer acquisition model,
Yeah.
the ability to deliver, and cash conversion cycle to operate under more pressure. Okay,
Yeah.
because now you say, well, I've done this national, now I need to do it now international. So that's pressure. Okay, but
Yeah.
that's why internationalization is not a sales activity, it's an institutional capability. Let's call it like that,
Right.
So if the core business is founder dependent, weakly governed, operationally inconsistent, or
Right.
poorly measured, the solution doesn't come from international expansion. Actually, international expansion will make those problems even bigger. So the right question is, can we enter another market? Okay, So the right question seems to be, can we enter another market? But
Yeah,
in actual fact, the right question is different. The right question is, can our business model survive replication without losing the economics, the trust, and the control?
right.
Because that's you need to obviously think about more defensively than offensively initially, and then you can offend. But that's completely a different question. Investors really understand this very well. They don't reward the company because it says, "Oh, it's going global," just like that.
Yeah,
They reward the company that shows it's built a system that can travel.
right,
That means, for example, a repeatable revenue logic. Yeah, this is
right.
something that we saw earlier on. That's why intellectual property is so important before
Yeah,
you go global, because if you build your business with that in mind, you will have the intellectual property architecture to move forward. That's what big businesses do. Let's think about Gillette. Let's think about Nike, Coca-Cola.
yeah,
They don't just reinvent something because they go global. They've already done the study with their own intellectual property before. Operational resilience is another meta. Okay,
yeah,
so that is fundamental. You must have built that.
yeah,
What else is important is local adaptability without a strategic drift.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so strategically you're not changing, but you need to be locally adaptable. Um, Very important, governance visibility. We touched on governance in part two of the
yeah,
last couple of weeks on that. That's why you don't want to go global if you haven't done first what we spoken about a couple of weeks ago about governance. Yeah, uh,
yeah,
financial control across borders. Okay,
yeah,
why am I saying that? Because if the architecture is not there, international growth can actually reduce valuation if it's not done
right,
it. If you didn't really work well on the other angle of the high valuation triangles, which are intellectual property and succession planning. So you
right,
must do those two well first, ideally. Now,
right.
because now the business is not just fragile, if you haven't done it, it's
Yeah,
actually fragile in multiple jurisdiction. So you are going from bad to worse, effectively. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's true because that comes to mind a company that I've been speaking last week. Well, last week actually we had a very serious conversation about what to do next. They've been teasing to say we want to go from our country and we want to go to the US, and they have a very good operation, a very good standards. They have no debt, they have very good sales cycles, etc., in their own country. But what is the challenge when they go to the US? They are a new player, they are literally unknown. They, even regardless of the patents that they have already in place, regardless of the sales that they have in place, regardless of everything else, when they landed in the US, well, actually they're trying to land in the US. The challenge is that they are new players and they need all the things. They have a good track record, and but even investors say, well, we appreciate that you have a very good track record, actually, but for us is not a track record that we can compare how you're going to perform and operate in this territory, because the people culture is different, because the ideas are different, the way that the certifications are done is different, safe and security, safe and healthy, etc. So I understand that actually many times internationalization is, as you say, a romanticized idea. It's not really looking in what the structure that is required to go across another border. So I think that is a very important distinction that you're making here. So in what the market often sees international expansions is pretty much ambition, sometimes I say, or as you mentioned, a romanticized idea. But investors want to see replicable discipline. That's pretty much the core of the things. So I guess that merits this question. What are the signs that a company is trying to internationalize too early, when they go from the idea to really what they have to do. So when you think actually this is a sign that it's too early, we need to address all the things before going to another jurisdiction.
So you're asking effectively when internationalization come too early. Is that correct, Francisco?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Okay, yeah. No, thank you. I mean, yeah, this is why, yeah, the high valuation triangle really follow different shape in different situation, different five phases: startup, scale up, stagnation, crisis, and exit. Yeah.
Right.
The book actually covers those five stages very well.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why usually the last angle of the triangle, going global, is preceded usually by the first two, which is intellectual property and succession planning.
Right.
And by following this triangle, we are able to say when this is happening, when internationalization comes too early. For example, the first is that the domestic model is not yet truly working, okay?
Right.
So if you haven't proven what you want to do internationally, if you haven't proven it domestically, then that's a warning sign. Absolutely.
Right.
A lot of companies say they want to expand because local growth is slowing. That's dangerous, for example, yeah. So first you want to make sure that you have gone for a good scale up. Good
Right.
scale up means you've done your IP monetization, you've done your succession planning well, your
Yeah.
local market is working well. Because sometimes international expansion is not a growth strategy. It's more like an escape from fixing the core, yeah?
Mm.
If, for example, unit economics are still inconsistent in your market, yeah? Let's say if pricing is still reactive, yeah?
Yeah.
Pricing doesn't follow the IP model. If delivery quality depends on heroic effort, again, there's no
Yeah.
succession planning. If management reporting is still too slow, if customer retention is not fully understood, then internationalization is definitely premature.
Right.
But let me tell you also about second sign.
Yeah.
Second sign is founder translation risk, yeah? What is that? Basically, in many businesses, the founder is the culture, is the sales engine, is the
Right.
problem solver, and the relationship glue. Okay.
Right.
Now that may work in one geography for a while, but it doesn't travel well at
Right.
all.
Right.
Yeah. Because international scale requires the business to work without the founder being physically present in every important conversation. Okay.
Right.
So the third sign is a lack of operational spine. Let's call it that.
Right.
Uh, what do I mean? What do I mean? No documented processes. Also, let's say unclear accountability, weak internal controls. Let me also say inconsistent onboarding,
Yeah.
poor KPI visibility, so you don't know exactly how you're all performing.
Yeah.
No relative way to compare performance across units or markets, so you don't know exactly what you're gonna go against.
Right.
Um, I would go as far as saying that without this, expansion becomes noisy.
Right.
The business starts receiving more information, but really understanding less. So we got really diminishing returns here. We got damage here, actually.
Yeah.
Um, Let me add another sign. Sign number 4 is margin illusion.
Right.
A new country may produce revenue quickly, but that tells you almost nothing on its own. Okay.
Yeah.
Once you account for travel, local hiring, legal setup, compliance, localization, uh, slower receivable, yeah, it happens,
Yeah.
or channel conflict, management distraction, and the cost of fixing mistakes, really.
Yeah.
Now, with this, the growth can be far less attractive than it first appears.
Right.
Um, and I was saying, let me add another one. Let me add another one. Number five, yeah. There's often no clear market entry logic.
Right.
So many businesses choose country emotionally, okay?
Right.
I'll give you some example, yeah, what people say usually. People say, oh, we had interest there. Uh, or they might even say, oh, we know somebody there. Or
Right.
or sometimes, oh, there seems to be demand there. There seems to be, obviously, seems to be, it's not good enough. You need a proper marketing study, supply and demand.
Right.
That's not really strategy. When I hear that, because strategy asks really, so why this country? Uh, why now? Uh, why us? Why should we
Right.
be in the country? So what must remain standardized? That's another question because if you done your IP well, you've done standardization. So you ask your question, what must remain standardized? What must be localized?
Yeah.
What must be protected at all cost? Now, this is a really, really crucial question. If those questions are not answered, then expansion becomes improvisation.
Right.
Uh, Improvisation does not really command a premium multiple. And actually, it's really the other way around, really.
Yeah. That's very interesting because actually it's I think that it hits all the things that people sometimes speak, but actually they don't document anything of these things. Or they document like a bit loose, like say, yeah, we're going to do this. This is a plan. Here we go. And last year, I remember because a very interesting company from Manchester wanted to go to. Actually, they landed in Spain. They hired around 25 people, but they did it because of the pressure of their investors to increase revenue, and they thought that actually going international was within Europe was a good idea. I think that looking backwards, based on your points, that probably was not a good idea because actually it was more an impulsive thing to do. Like I say, yes, we are moving, we are going international, we are fulfilling the plan that we have 3 years ago, but probably they haven't put a good thought which was the right country eventually if they were landing or going to the right countries, right? Because actually, if you see in terms of the business that they had, probably they needed to go to another geography rather than Spain because actually there was not a big market size for the services and products that they were selling. Anyway, but actually, if you review these points again, I will highly suggest to go again if you are looking into internationalization because sometimes also picking the geography is very important. Let's do a little pause here, if you don't mind, Matteo, because I think that we had to address two things. One is that this is probably not a very pleasing thinking that people have today. Will say, well, internationalization, I want to do it, but actually, is how to stop that impulsiveness. So I want to put this question to the audience to see how they think about this. Have you actually build a business that can travel, or have you built a business that only works because you are standing in the middle of it? And this is to the point number two that you mentioned there, is how dependent the business is on yourself as a founder, as a head of the executive team, when you're going to go international. So can your business travel, or are you going, if it can, are you part of that problem now? Because actually everything is depending on you. And I think we have to do a second pause here, Matteo, while the people are thinking and probably coming back in the comments, because there is a very interesting video that we want to show to the audience. I think that we can show the video while they are thinking at these questions.
Yeah, okay, no, thank you very much, Francisco. I think it's 90 seconds only. So
Right.
the question you've asked is, have you actually built a business that can travel, or have you built a business that only works because if you're standing, that's you
Yeah.
in the middle of it? No, I think it's such an important question. Yeah, I would say let's go ahead with the video with the 90 second. I'm sure people will enjoy looking at what felt pivot scale is going to offer them.
Right, fantastic. All right, fantastic. And here's a book. And today we are literally talking about internalization or going global. And in the book, as you can see in the trailer, on page 200, you have the section that we are talking today, which is going global or international, how you do your internalization. And one of the things I would like to recap after this pause and the question, I'm going to repeat the question again, so if you missed it earlier, is the signs of early internalization. So you look into these 5 things. So is your domestic model, if truly working? The second thing is, the second sign is if you as a founder are a risk because everything is around you. And the third thing is if your operations are working, a documented standard operation procedure, your systems, and system is not only software, it's actually the workflows, the ways that you document things, how they are repeated by other people in your teams without your supervision. And number 4 is the margins. Do you have the real margin? Is it an illusion, or you're going to increase your margin if you're going international or local, or the local margin are going to subsidize literally your cross-border operations, and you are losing margins there? And the last one, if you have a clear market logic, are you going to the right place, why you're going there, and which is the benefit of going into the new geography? And repeating the question, have you actually built a business that can travel? If you can put in the comments what you think about that. And the second portion of this, or second part of these questions, have you built a business that only works because you are standing in the middle of it? And this is sometimes, many times, the case. So perhaps you have your network, your connections, your influence in your country, in your geography, and going international, that pretty much had to build from scratch because unfortunately nobody knows you. Matteo, let me bring back onto that exact point, if you don't mind. How should a founder think about international readiness in a more disciplined way?
Thank you, Francisco. I mean, I would frame international readiness
Right.
as a system with 5 tests, okay? 5 tests. I'll tell you which one they are. No, I'll go one by one. The first one is economic transferability.
Right.
Question that we should really answer is, can the business reproduce attractive economics in another market?
Right.
Not just revenue, economics, yeah? Questions, I would ask another 5 questions here, can it preserve gross margin? Can it preserve cash discipline?
Mm.
Uh, can customer acquisition still make sense? Okay, don't forget about the LTV to CAC
Right.
ratio has to be at least 3 to 1, if no more. Um, can pricing hold? Can delivery remain profitable? Now, all these 5 questions is about economic transferability. If the economics do not transfer, the business is not scaling, it's just spreading.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So that's why, the intellectual property monetization structure will help you to actually be economically transferable. So
Yeah.
the second question is operational repeatability.
Right.
And here there are some more questions. One is, can the operating model be repeated without chaos? Okay.
Right.
Say if one country requires a completely different manual effort, a completely different way of managing people, and a completely different commercial logic, then the company may not have a scalable model. It may just have isolated wins. Okay.
Right. Right.
Which is not really what you want because then
Mm.
it's very, very risky. Um, number three, governance visibility. Now we go to the second angle of the high valuation triangle, succession planning
Right.
as well. Now, can leadership still see clearly? Because when business expand, one of the first thing that breaks is visibility. Okay. So the board receives more dashboards, but less truth.
Right.
There are more meetings, but weaker clarity.
Right.
Uh, there are more local explanations, but less comparability.
Right.
So a scalable international business really needs reporting architecture that makes really, uh, let's say, makes reality, let's call it like that, visible early. Okay.
Right. Right.
I mean, you don't want to have surprises, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, we touched on government visibility. Let me also talk about number 4, which is the text is cultural portability. Can the standards of the business travel? This matters much more than people think, because culture is not motivational language. Culture is how decisions get made when pressure rises. That's why the intellectual property architecture is important at the outset of the business, yeah?
Right.
Because culture will be systemized, it's not something that you have to improvise, yeah. uh, that's why going global should only happen after you have mastered really your intellectual property strategy. So if values, standards, approval logic, or risk appetite, yeah, and customer commitments are not embedded structurally, they will not survive replication.
Right.
The fifth and last test is about strategic coherence, yeah?
Yeah.
The question is, does the international move strengthen the valuation story or you actually dilute it, yeah?
Yeah.
This is a very neglected question. A company can enter a new market, can actually become less investable because the narrative is lost, it gets messier. Uh, Too many customer types, too many routes to market, too many local variation, uh, too many exception, too much dependence on the local individuals as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that weakens the story. Yeah, because that weakens the value transferability that we've spoken about in the last few weeks. Um, the strongest international growth creates more scale and more clarity, not more
Right.
confusion. In the book, you will find some real case studies, yeah, of how this happens, uh,
Yeah.
how you should really go global. So that is how I would think about readiness. International expansion should increase, I would say 4 things, yeah.
Hmm.
It should increase transferability, resilience, institutional trust, and buyer confidence.
Right,
If it doesn't, then the business may be growing geographically while shrinking structurally.
right, right,
And you will see what happened with businesses that master intellectual property. They create system and standards that then will create those four things:
yeah,
transferability, resilience, institutional trust, and buyer confidence.
right,
That's why the high valuation triangle needs to be seen together as a real system for a business to be chased by customers, by investors, and by banks.
right. Yeah, and actually, the two things very interesting because going back to the book, and the reason why is because you mentioned that in the book there are very good examples, and I think if we go back to page, I have bookmarked by the way, we have in page 200, so the global energy expansion by BP, and then further down the line we have the technology companies like Amazon, Netflix, and Google. So you have it. Oh, sorry, I can see it in the chapter 8. So there are very good examples in the book from page 200 how this internationalization had been done. And this is one thing that actually sometimes is difficult for companies and say, well, they are large international companies, so they have a very, very well structured or teams advising and helping them to do all these things. Actually, how can be relevant to me? And I think that this is the main idea that we can transfer to everybody. So these big ideas actually are transferable because they are business principles. It's not something actually cannot be replicated at smaller scale in your own your own organization. So you have the step, you have the processes, you have the system, how to do it. The thing is just to adapt it to your organization. Yeah, it will require a bit of thinking. It will require a little of back and forward, trial and error, but it's not something that is impossible. And remember one thing, all these companies already started perhaps in the same or worse position that you started. Because look at Amazon. There's a famous picture of the founder of Amazon, which was a desk and a computer and a big whiteboard saying Amazon.com. That was it. And they started with very little money at the same time. Look what a giant that they built. But I think that the lesson or the thing that you to rescue here, it doesn't matter your size, it doesn't matter your capabilities, it's the processes and the principles you apply to get the things through and get that into a business outcome that is successful. So the second thing that grabbed my attention, Matteo, sorry, I'm going too long, but actually I think it's important, is growing geographically while shrinking the structure of your business. So that is exactly what happens in a lot of firms. So how we can make this practical now? So, and probably it's a question that merits now is, can you walk us through a simple example of how international expansion can either increase value or literally destroy it?
Thank you, thank you. No, I mean, Francisco, I mean, just going back to the book and the evaluation triangle,
Yeah,
the idea was really to democratize, yeah.
right, right,
This is not something going global that belongs to big businesses.
right.
By following the evaluation triangle, every one of you uh, can actually replicate what has been done by big businesses. So
Right.
go from small to big and from big to bigger.
Yeah.
But since you're asking me about an example, let me give you an example, a
Yeah.
numerical example
Sure.
now. Let's take a hypothetical business doing £5 million
Yeah.
in annual revenue in the UK.
Yeah.
Now, this business has a decent gross margin, strong founder-led sales, acceptable client retention, but still some operational dependence on key individuals. Okay.
Right.
The founder decides to expand into two new markets. Now, scenario A, expansion without system readiness. The scenario B will be expansion with readiness architecture. Okay.
Right.
So let's say without system readiness, the company hires local commercial people too early.
Yeah.
Pricing is adapting formally. There are local promises made to win customers. The onboarding process varies market by market. Receivables stretch because collection discipline is weaker abroad.
Right.
Management reporting arrives late. Product or service delivery becomes inconsistent.
Yeah.
Revenue rises from £5 million to £6.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
On paper, that looks good, but underneath, what's really happening is that margin drops, receivables worsen,
Right.
management complexity rises,
Yeah.
control weakens, and the founder becomes even more central to holding things together. Now,
Mm.
that's not premium growth, that's fragile growth.
Right.
An investor may actually discount the business harder because now risk has multiplied faster than quality. Okay?
Right.
Let's
Yeah.
never forget that valuation goes up when risk goes down. Valuation goes down when risk goes up. Simple as
Right.
that. Let's now look at the other scenario, scenario expansion with readiness architecture. Let's look
Right.
at the right way to do things. So, same company, but before expanding, it does the hard work.
Right.
It standardizes the operating model.
Right.
It strengthens reporting.
Yeah.
It clarifies pricing guardrails.
Mm-hmm.
It defines approval authority.
Right.
It creates comparable KPIs across markets. It documents service delivery standards. It reduces founder dependency. It identifies what must remain central and what can be localized. Okay.
Right.
So
Right.
we're talking about real readiness architecture here. Now,
Yeah.
when it enters a second market, the economics are visible now.
Right.
The variance is explainable. The problems are caught early. The model is easier to trust.
Right.
Now, the revenue again rises to £6.5 million. Exactly
Mm-hmm.
the same result, financial result.
Yeah.
But this time the valuation story is very different.
Right.
Why? Uh, because the investor is not just seeing more sales, they are seeing a business that can replicate itself with discipline. That's what we call scalability, yeah?
Mm.
And that's what gets rewarded.
Mm.
Now, the difference between the two scenario is not really ambition. It's really architecture. It's about
Right.
structure, okay? So this is I hope this makes sense to you, Francisco. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. And actually, this remind me last week that when we spoke about financial architecture, so people think that actually financial is just to audit numbers and reporting, etc., etc. But here you have a clear, distinct example what these architectures or these structures are making sense in terms of when the company decides to go to a big strategic move, which is going international. I think it's very valuable and makes sense. So let's try a question for our audience now based on this information. So that which is I think is a very relevant or revealing test. Let's see if how much can reveal so far. So if your business entered 2 new markets next quarter, will your reporting become clearer or noisier, right? So you will have better clarity or a good clarity or more fuzzy information that say you don't understand what's going on. So let me repeat the question just in case. So let's imagine that your business entered 2 new markets next quarter. So would your reporting become clearer or more confusing? In other words, right? Okay, so you can leave your comments there and we'll review them and come back to you, or you can DM us if you have further questions. But continuing with this conversation, because I think there is a flow here that's very important, and I want to keep it going, but I want to lose everybody. I bring everybody together to this conversation. So where does the high valuation triangle sits inside this internationalization discussion? Because actually I think it's very important to see how the high valuation triangle works overall, including going international.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned quite a few times today, the high valuation triangle sits right at the center of it. Yeah.
Right, right,
Because international scale only works properly when the three sides of the triangle are working together. The
right.
first one is intellectual property monetization.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of businesses think international expansion means selling more of the same thing in more places. No, the real question is, what exactly are we monetizing? Is it
Yeah,
just labor? Is it founder reputation? Is it a local relationship? Or is it a transferable asset?
yeah,
Okay. So ownership first, absolutely fundamental. If the company has not converted its know-how, process, method, brand, data, commercial structure, operating logic into something replicable, then international expansion becomes expensive. So think about Nike. How do they go global? McDonald's, how do they go global?
right,
First they've actually converted the know-how, processes, method, brand data into something replicable. And sometimes they do
right,
it through licensing, sometimes they do through franchising, sometimes they do through joint venture. So intellectual property is what allows the company to scale with leverage rather than just effort. Again,
right,
this is not just for big businesses, it's for even very small businesses like yourself, like you're watching today.
right,
So the first side of the triangle. Now let's come to the second side of the evaluation triangle, which is succession planning and leadership depth.
right,
Internationalization exposes leadership weakness very quickly. A founder who can manage one geography through force of personality may not be able to manage three.
right,
So that's why leadership architecture matters. Several questions here. Who owns what? So no ownership gaps. Who can make decisions? How are issues escalated?
right,
How is quality maintained? And the other question is how is performance compared across borders, obviously. So
right, right,
without leadership depth, international growth just increases executive strain, yeah?
right, right,
Number three, going global. This is where people often misunderstand the triangle. Going global is not simply the final step after domestic success, really. Um, it's the structured expression of the first two. Okay?
mm,
So if you have transferable intellectual property and scalable leadership, global expansion really becomes a logical extension. Again, let's look at
right,
the example of Amazon, of Apple. That's
right,
what they do. Yeah. If you do not, global expansion becomes operational self-harm. Okay.
right,
So the high valuation triangle matters here because it prevents businesses from mistaking foreign movement for real scale. And especially in AI-driven economies, this is so much more fundamental than it's ever been in the past.
yeah,
An investor can tell the difference. They ask, is the value transferable? Is the management system scalable?
right,
Is expansion increasing optionality or is increasing risk? Uh,
right.
that's why internationalization is not separate from valuation strategy. It is valuation strategy, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that is very true because this example that I mentioned at the beginning, that companies want to go to the US in terms of the next uh, strategic move in terms of growth, revenues, etc. So the two things actually investors are looking for is exactly that. Is actually are they preserving the value? Are having the operational capacity? Are the managing system is scalable? How they increase their options. So it's really about and they haven't decided to invest, by the way. So they're still looking into understand all these questions before even going to say to the owners, I say, well, we might be interested to have a conversation, a fuller conversation with yourself. So I think actually at this point, the internationalization of a company is all about evidence, how you can evidence how well you're structured, how well you're not dependent on people. You have the operating systems, and we mentioned operating system again, so actually your processes and systems. So when evidence, when this evidence that the business can carry its quality into another market is very important. So for those, I think that for those watching today, what should they be diagnosing immediately if they are serious about going international?
Yeah, very good question. I would actually say they should really. Well, first of all, the book has a self-assessment you can actually follow, yeah,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
would
yeah.
really help you. Those self-assessment or those three chapters will help you so much with this. But I would anticipate five immediate question.
Yeah, I'll show the kind of a self-assessment that
Self-assessment,
you're
yeah.
going to get. Yes. So it's like
So,
you can see here is a checkbox, so you can go through and
mm,
understand correctly what if you are hitting the mark or not, or at least a bare minimum.
yeah, I would
Sorry,
ask
Matteo, I
also
interrupted.
five immediate questions. The book
Yeah,
obviously got this self-assessment, and they will help you not just now because you can go back to them because this is really evergreen.
yeah,
The answer you give today, they are not the same answer you're going to give tomorrow,
yeah,
and so that's something that we can definitely consider as a uh, as a situation where you're going to start giving some answer now, but then you're going to go back and see if you can change the answer in future
right,
because you've learned the lesson. So there are five immediate questions, I would say. First question number one, what part of our success is truly transferable? Yeah.
right,
Now, if the answer is unclear, don't expand yet. Okay. The second question is, what breaks if the founder is absent for 30 days? Okay.
right,
Because whatever breaks domestically will break harder internationally. Okay.
right,
So that's an easy question to imagine. The third question number three is, can we compare performance across markets in a disciplined way?
right,
Because if the answer is not, then complexity will outrun control. Okay?
right,
That's why it's important to be well prepared before this. Question number four is, what must remain standardized and what can be localized?
right,
Because if everything is flexible, then nothing is scalable. Okay?
right,
So you need to have level standardization. Standardization obviously will come from intellectual property monetization, the right monetization, and the right revenue architecture.
right,
A fifth question, last question is, will expansion improve investor trust or just inflate the story?
right,
Because markets may reward narrative temporarily, but capital rewards proof. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, so these are the five questions I would ask.
yeah,
And this is the key message for today, in my opinion. A business does not become more valuable because it becomes more international. It becomes more valuable when internationalization proves that the core is portable,
right,
it's resilient, and it's also investable.
right.
That's the difference, yeah.
Right. No, no, I think that that's perfect. So I think that today's message is very, very clear. Going global is not a badge that you put in your chest. It's a stress test of your organization. It's a core. If the core is strong, internationalization can multiply value. But if the core of your company is weak, it can expose everything that is hidden and the fault line in the business. So where the things are breaking. So if this conversation resonates, stay close to the series, because we are building step by step how valuation is actually engineered. And we talk about financial architecture, we create wealth. Matteo mentioned last week about how a CFO should increase, it will be a wealth creator, not just an auditor of numbers or strategies. So this is very important, because then you start to break through the, let's say, average organization, and then you start to achieve the things that you're looking for. And particularly if this episode made you rethink growth, structure, or readiness, tell us in the comments what part hit hardest for you, because sometimes you have things that you say, aha, probably that I don't like it, but probably it's that the particular thing that you should be looking more closely. So we'll see you in the next episode. But actually, I think, Matteo, you have a last few words for today.
Thank you very much, Francisco. And together we are now creating the 12 outcomes in 49 days, which we will be doing a special session about. So stay tuned. What we are looking to do, given your feedback from this, so we're looking to create a program which is going to be in just 49 days, where in 12 with 12 outcomes you will become a business, you will build a business that is going to be chased by customers, by banks, and by investors. So it's based around what we're talking about here at the Valuation Code. And there are 4 different groups. The first one is about how do you become fundable? How do you really get the foundation business? The second one is about leadership. It's about leadership and governance structure. The third one is about scalability. And so today was the last episode about scalability. And the fourth one is about how to build really your valuation higher with an exit plan. And the exit plan is not necessarily doesn't necessarily mean that you need to sell or you will sell the business in future. But the exit plan is what is going to give you the high valuation strategy, the high valuation triangle that will allow your business to also be really surviving in these extraordinary times. Because in AI-driven economies, professionalization is even more important, because let's face it, there are 40% of AI projects that will fail, according to Gartner. Now, the other 60% of businesses, they are going to be the ones who are going to win. You don't want to be that 40% of business that is not, for example, AI ready, or is not professionalized enough to be bankable and investable. So we'll be building that in the next few days, and stay tuned so that we'll be able to share it with you. If you want to start thinking about this program yourself, please write your comment sprint on this particular live event. Type sprint on the comment, and we'll send you really the details about the high valuation sprint. We will also send you a scorecard from which we will send you back a diagnostic about whether this is the kind of program that will benefit you as well. Because the last thing you want to do is you want to find out that you join something that is not really going to benefit you. So when you write sprint, you will receive within the next 1 or 2 hours, you will also receive a scorecard that you will be able to to access for free and get a diagnostic back from us.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Matteo. And I think we catch up next week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.